Well, again, thank you for joining us today for the AgrAbility webinar series. Today we're going to be discussing selecting and purchasing equipment for small farms. Our presenter is Sean Ellers, and we are recording this session. A few basic instructions before we begin with the presentation. You will need speakers or headphones, as we are not using a phone connection today. If you would like to check your sound, you may use the audio menu at the top of your screen and use the test computer audio choice. We do have captioning available. You should see the captioning window at the side. You should get that going in just a minute. Any of the windows on the right of your screen can be expanded or contracted by using the arrow on the side. So feel free to do that depending on your preferences. You can also expand the size of the right-hand column by dragging it. If you'd like to make any comments or ask any questions during the presentation, you have a chat icon at the top right of your screen. If you click on that, it should turn blue. You will have the option of entering a question or comment into the chat box, and you can either choose to send that to everyone or just to the host, and then you need to click the send button in order to do that. During the question and answer period at the end of our presentation, you will also have the option of asking your question verbally if you have a web microphone. You should see a raise hand icon at the bottom of your right-hand column. If you would click on that when you have a question and during the question and answer period, we will attempt to activate your microphone so you can ask your question verbally. We do have 5 quick survey questions at the end and an opportunity for you to share other comments if you would like. So please stick around for that just before the question and answer period. Again, we are recording this session, and it is going to be archived on the agrability.org website at the URL that's listed on your screen. If you have any problems, please contact us through the chat window in terms of technical issues. If for some reason you're not able to use the chat window, we will be monitoring the AgrAbility at agrability.org web email account during the session. So please go ahead and email us via that venue if you are not able to use the chat window. A few issues that we've had in the past. If you have any echo, please make sure you're not logged in twice. If you're hearing but not seeing the slides advance, then make sure your computer is still awake. Just move your mouse or hit the enter button. If we are disconnected with our presenter, please just hang on and we will reconnect as soon as possible. And if you are disconnected as a participant, please just log in again. The webinar is sponsored by AgrAbility, and for those that are not familiar with our program, it is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Our main focus is working with people that have some kind of impairment in agriculture, physical disabilities or other impairments. Every AgrAbility AgrAbility project is a partnership between a land-grant university and at least one nonprofit disability services organization. And we currently have projects in 20 states around the country. There's one national AgrAbility project, which is housed here at Purdue in the Breaking New Ground Resource Center. And our partners for the project include Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, Arthritis Foundation, Heartland Region, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and Colorado State University. If you'd like more information about AgrAbility, or if you'd like to view any of our past webinars, please log into agrability.org. So at this point, I'm going to disconnect my camera and turn things over to Sean Ellers for his presentation.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul. As he said, my name is Sean Ayles. I am a doctoral candidate here at Purdue University in the Department of Agricultural and Biological Engineering. Today, I'm going to be talking about Small Farm Guide to Selecting and Purchasing Equipment. So, we have about 6 points that we're going to talk about here. First, we're going to introduce introduction. So this is just going to introduce our goals and scope of the presentation. Asking the right questions is going to be a large part of our presentation. So these are questions you should be asking yourself and others involved in small farm operations. Doing your research. So we're going to talk about understanding the associated costs and purchasing of equipment and just being an informed consumer. Sources of equipment. So we're going to talk about our different, just various modes of acquiring equipment. So this will be when we talk to dealers or private party or auction is what we're going to be covering here in this presentation. Look before you buy. So we're going to discuss a few problem areas that you should be aware of, when looking at used equipment, and just some things to help you become a more informed consumer. And lastly, we'll have a few resources at the end of the presentation to assist you should you wish to have some more information beyond this presentation. So our goal statement is to assist small and beginning farmers to select and acquire safe and appropriate agricultural equipment that will increase their likelihood of becoming successful in meeting their personal and production goals. So what this means is that this presentation was designed to offer guidance and suggestions by helping you ask the right questions during the search phase to acquire equipment best suited to your needs. So the very first step that we're going to discuss would be determining what or if purchasing equipment for your small farm is asking yourself the right questions. So examples of this you might consider are, what are my long-term goals? Why do I want equipment? What enterprises will I pursue? What activities are time sensitive? How much money do I have to invest? Do I have alternatives? What size equipment do I need? Who will service or maintain my equipment? So we're going to discuss all these points along with who will use the equipment. Okay. So first off, what are my long-term goals? So we need to ask ourselves, why are we wanting to venture into this? Why are we farming? Why are we wanting to invest in equipment? Is this going to be a long-term investment for us, or is this just something that we think would be fun? So what are our plans for using this equipment? Do we have any alternatives? What else can we use this equipment for? Should we purchase it outside of the production of whatever commodity you wish to invest in? So, why do I need or want equipment? So the first 2 points I have here are more of the wants. So do we want equipment just to keep up with our neighbors, or do we have a certain level of pride? You want a certain color or brand of equipment. And then we need to talk about more of the needs. So do I need equipment because I have time constraints or restraints in my operation? Do I have just a narrow window when I can do things? So I need a mechanized process to assist me. The second reason you might need equipment is because any type of physical limitation you might have, or any of your workers might have, that is keeping you from doing the tasks that you'd like to do. So in those instances, equipment would be an excellent source or help in helping you acquire your job or do your job correctly. So what enterprises will I pursue? So there's so many small farm enterprises we can go over. Here's just a few that common ones that we'd like to address. So vegetable crops, row crops, hay, orchard, livestock, and woodlots. Now, I would like to call your attention to this picture. I really like this. It really illustrates a few things that we'd like to, touch on, kind of combining multiple enterprises and help maximize the profit potential of your land. So in this picture, we have a farmer combining row crops. So it looks like he has wheat here in with a woodlot. And so we're maximizing the profit of this land. Some others that small operations might do would be in vegetable production. I've seen where people will make a movable chicken coop that they roll across their vegetable production, and then so the manure from the chickens, benefits the plants, whereas the chickens eat the bugs and pests off the vegetable crop. So there are quite a few ways that we can combine multiple enterprises, and so it's just one of the questions that we'd like you to consider when thinking about your pursuits. So we need to think about what we do that is time sensitive. So a couple things that come to mind when we talk about time sensitivity would be hay production. We'll get into this a little bit later, but hay, there's usually a narrow window, after or before weather events, say it's going to rain, and you have to allow the hay to cure for a couple days until it has a low enough moisture content to bale. So hay is a very time-sensitive process that we undergo. Also, crop spraying is very time-sensitive as well, depending on what you're spraying. Sometimes a spray has to be down several days or a week or more before you plant your crop or before your crop emerges. Also, it can be time-sensitive in treating for pests, any type of parasite or insect, or also some types of weeds can only be sprayed when they're very small in their growth stage. So it can be very time sensitive. A few days can make a difference of having a good crop or losing it to some type of external event. Planting is very time sensitive as well, where we sometimes have a narrow window of time. When the conditions are right, there might be rain in the forecast or something of that matter that we need to be aware of. And then if this is our business, and we want to do everything when the conditions are appropriate. And so we're just trying to get you to think about, what operations you do that are very time sensitive and why you might want to invest in equipment that you could, rely on yourself instead of relying on somebody else to assist you. And lastly, harvest. Harvest is a time sensitive process as well. So we want to have the optimal quality in our harvest, and so it needs to be done at the correct time. So we have a few alternatives to doing it ourselves. One of them is custom hiring. So we could hire a third party or somebody to do it for us, and it might be more cost effective. When you go out and price equipment, if it's new equipment or used equipment, it takes a large investment. So you might find that it might be more beneficial or cost effective for you to hire somebody to do, custom work for you. One problem with custom hire is often timing. And so we'll talk about this a little bit later, but oftentimes small farms, small plots might have additional fees, and bluntly, they might not rank as high on the list of a custom operator to be as punctual when you need them. So it's something to consider with small farms when thinking about custom hire. The second thing we could do in alternative to purchasing equipment would be to hire manual labor. So do we have access to responsible workforce that can help us get these tasks done in a timely manner? This brings up issues of liability, and this should be considered in the event that there's ever an accident on your property with these manual labor workers. And the other alternative to purchasing equipment would be purchasing small implements, maybe walk-behind tractor, or here I have pictured a walk-behind tiller or a walk-behind sprayer. And so these are very good alternatives. They do not cost nearly as much, but it's still a way of mechanizing your process without a large cost of purchasing a tractor and all of the implements that go along with the tractor. So when purchasing your equipment and accessories, you need to think about what accessories you're going to need with your tractor. One thing people often, they don't forget about, but they often don't consider is the cost of the accessories on top of purchasing the initial investment of the tractor. So pictured here to the left, I have quite a few accessories that are common that you might want. You know, you might need some type of mowing or spraying or some type of tillage device. And so all these accessories can add up in your costs as well. Your annual usage. So how much or how often will you use this equipment? Low-frequency tools or accessories can be rented for a small fraction of the cost they are to buy. So, and you also have some benefits of renting. You don't have the burden of storage or maintenance or a large monetary investment. I've spoken to several dealers, and they say that they have tractors that people trade in, and they don't have a high hour, people haven't put a lot of hours on them. So when we think of equipment, we can relate that to automobiles, where hours are similar to how many miles on their car. So they don't, tractors don't have odometers, they have hour meters. So this is how we gauge the use of your tractor or your implements. And then we need to consider your exposure or your people that are working for you who's operating the equipment, their exposure to the elements. So we might have medical restrictions. They might not be able to be in direct sunlight. We might have other restrictions, like say you're spraying pesticides or herbicides, and they need to be inside an enclosed cab. And so there are many things to consider when considering different models of tractors. So here I have pictured a small lawn tractor in the top left, and this isn't heated, but it does offer wind protection for wintertime use, or something as simple as the bottom picture, which is just a canopy that attaches to your ROPS or your rollover protective structure. It offers protection from direct sunlight. So who's going to use this equipment? Do you or your employees have the experience to operate farm equipment? Do you have people that you can ask that can assist you with this? Is your workforce comprised mainly of younger or older workers? Do I or employees require any special considerations, such as disabilities when choosing machinery? And this leads into the next slide, which is the accessibility of the machinery. Do I or my employees require any type of assistive device? How difficult is it to mount or dismount the tractor? So pictured here to the left, we have a tractor that is equipped with a lift for an operator with a disability. Can't climb up into the tractor, so this lift offers them an avenue so they can get into the operator's seat to still perform the same task. So we need to consider, is this something that you require for your operation? Secondly, we need to consider how difficult the tractor is to get into the operator's position. So does the tractor have steps? If so, are they very high? Are they at a manageable height? I've seen tractors and sprayers and combines, and some of them have extremely high first steps. Like they can be over 2 foot, maybe even 30 inches. It's just a very high first step. And that's, that might not be a manageable, way to get in a tractor for somebody. So we need to consider this when we're looking at different types of equipment. Lastly, does the tractor offer sufficient visibility for the task you wish to perform? If not, what can be done to decrease the blind spots? This is mainly what my research focuses on here as a PhD student. I look at the blind spots of agricultural machinery, and there are many things we can do, such as adding mirrors or cameras to assist the operator in viewing these hard to see areas. The operator might have some type of medical restraint. They might not be able to turn their head because of arthritis or anything like that. So we need to be aware and help these people to be very successful in operating the machinery. The picture I have down at the bottom goes along with how difficult it is to mount or dismount the tractor. This is a tractor I restored several years ago, but this tractor is from the 1950s era. And you notice that it doesn't have any type of step or really an easy way to get into the operating position. So really, to mount this tractor, you step on the hitch and the axle and then try to swing over the fender there and try to sit on the seat. And it is not an easy task. I have difficulty with it, so we need to consider who's going to be using this equipment and how hard it is to get on and off the equipment. Okay, so what size will meet my needs when talking about tractors? So there are a few things we need to consider here. Horsepower demand is the first one when sizing your tractor. So the horsepower sizing, you size your tractor to your accessories when you're purchasing them, or if you already have the accessories and you need a tractor to power them, you need to size the accessories to your tractor or vice versa. So we need to consider the accessories to be used. Many accessories have different demands. Some might need different types of mounting. So say we have a 3-point hitch, which we'll discuss this later on, or maybe it might be a drawbar pulled implement. Does your accessory require a PTO, which is power takeoff, or does it require hydraulics? There are several things to consider here. Or does your tractor have enough power to pull this accessory? So besides sizing choosing a tractor, we need to choose our accessories appropriately to match the size of tractor that we own. Weight is a big one, or when you're talking about tractors, this is typically called ballasting. There are a couple things that the downside to having too much weight, that can lead to compaction of your ground, and compaction leads to poor crop quality and stands, and it is not as good for our ground. The alternative to having too much weight would be having too little. So this happens oftentimes when somebody puts too large of an implement on the back of their tractor. It's not appropriately sized, and oftentimes you can have difficulty steering. I've seen where people would put a large mower on the back of a tractor, and when they raise the mower at the end of the field, the front end, their wheels get kind of light and difficult to steer. So we can oversize or be underweight in that respect. We do have constraints when considering what tractor is appropriate for you. So you might have a constraint to what size your building can hold. Is the tractor too tall? Is the tractor too wide? We can also think about this as wheel spacing for what type of crops or enterprise you wish to pursue. So oftentimes tractors have adjustable wheel spacing, to set between the rows of the crops, or maybe if the tractor is going to be used for mowing, we would like to set the wheels wide for increased stability if you have kind of an uneven terrain. And then the last thing I have on this page would be the hydraulic capacity. Older tractors used to be more mechanized in how mechanical function, whereas newer equipment and new accessories rely more on the hydraulics of tractors, and so the hydraulic capacity. So this could be for your accessories. Say you want to put a front-end loader on the tractor, or you want to power some accessory like a wood splitter or some type of pump, some sort of sprayer, or even lifting and lowering of your trailing implement. So a lot of implements are raised and lowered using hydraulic cylinders. So we need to have hydraulic capacity on our tractor if this is if you're pursuing these types of attachments. These tractors pictured here, a lot of these tractors do not even have hydraulics as we go farther down the line. But the newer ones here on the far left, they do have more of a hydraulic. So, it depends on what age of tractor we choose to buy for our operation in respect to the hydraulic capacity. Okay, so the economics, and I hit the wrong button, there we go, economics of our selection. So what is my ability to cash? You need to know what you can afford. This is really one of the first questions you should ask yourself when pursuing a tractor or implement, is just knowing your budget when you go and look. This is where we kind of bring in the question, will new or used equipment better fit my budget? So we'll discuss the differences and some advantages to purchasing one over the other. But, we need to consider what our budget is before we can really move on to this next phase. Do I have appropriate storage? So we put a large investment into the equipment, and then we ask ourselves, you want to protect your investment, so you have to be able to store this equipment to keep it out of the elements, and so it lasts for many years and gives you a long time of useful life out of it. So you need to see if you've budgeted for maintenance or normal operation costs of machinery. So these are just, once again, a big overview of all the questions you should ask yourself before, diving in and purchasing something for your operation. Another thing we need to look at are the cost of alternatives. So this is what we're talking about if we're purchasing new or if we're purchasing used and what our alternatives are. So here's something I'd like to bring up would be deals and incentives sometimes offered by dealers. So in this picture, this is from a dealer that I know, but this is a package that they put together. And what this package includes is the tractor with a loader and 2 attachments, which is a mower and a box scraper, and a trailer and all the hardware to tie down the tractor onto the trailer. So basically, this is just a complete package that they offer to landowners to everything is appropriately sized to each other, and basically the purchaser shows up and drives away with pretty much a mini farm in a box. And it's just one incentive or you can go with. Now, the benefit of doing this is this particular package costs about $23,000, but the tractor and the loader alone cost $20,000. So, you gain a lot just by buying it in a package. It's a very popular mode for people. I believe this particular dealer said they've sold nearly 160 of these packages in the past year and a half. So it's a very popular choice for landowners. They said typically less than 50 acres, people really, found those packages useful. Another thing we need to talk about would be owning versus leasing. Many dealerships offer a lease package, as the same as leasing a car, and instead of being based on mileage, like a leased car would be, tractors are often based on hours, or how many hours you use in a year. So a lease option is also available. And another thing, by buying new, you have incentives such as financing options that you don't always have when you go with other alternatives such as options or, buying out of somebody's front yard, which we'll discuss later. So this is where we get into talking about used equipment and custom hire. So custom hire rates, depending on where you're located in the country. Here in Indiana, Purdue University is a great source for this. Our econ department puts together, they survey farmers from all across the state, and they put together common rates that you can expect to pay if you hire somebody to do custom rates. So I do have a link. I'll post this later after the presentation. But depending on where you're located in the country, maybe extension service, there are many places that you can go that can help you acquire this information for your region of the country. Who will service or maintain your equipment? So you need to ask yourself if you have the mechanical ability to keep the maintenance up on your equipment, or do you know people who do have these skills? Can you afford dealer service? So dealer service can be quite expensive on equipment. Just because of the sheer nature of farm equipment, typically they have to do a home visit, have to send out a service truck to drive to your residence or your operation and service it there. Just because, sometimes it's difficult to transport farm machinery. So we need to ask ourselves, is that, something that you're prepared to encounter? Another thing are consequences of downtime. So earlier in the presentation, we talked about how many operations are time sensitive. And so basically our tractors and our implements are just tools to perform a task. And the time they're, spent not functioning correctly is taken away from the true intention of you even purchasing the equipment to begin with. So, we need to invest and make sure that we keep our equipment in good working condition and purchase the best equipment we can reasonably acquire given our particular situation. So this leads us to doing your research. So the cost of accessories, as I said earlier, is often overlooked when purchasing a tractor for a small farm. So these accessories can be quite expensive. Here pictured in the top left corner is a hilling attachment, and this is one that I made myself. What I did, I bought the hilling blades there you've seen, and I just put it on a modular platform called a carry-all, and basically I invested about $250 in this. Whereas if I bought one made from a factory, it might cost $500 or more, 2 to 4 times as much for the similar type of instrument or implement. So, you consider different avenues. This carry-all 3-point attachment, if you go back to slide 8 after the presentation, you can see it used, a small tractor used it as a sprayer attachment. So, the small things like this are very easy to make a modular design and do quite a few different things without a huge investment of money. So our cost to operate. This comes into what type of tractor equipment we purchase. Most newer tractors are typically diesel-powered, diesel engines, whereas we get into older tractors, they're usually gasoline or all fuel, depending on how old you go. But gasoline-powered tractors are not quite as efficient in their use of fuel, and they can be quite expensive, doing a day's work with them in terms of fuel costs and other costs associated with that. And then we ask ourselves the experience of others. Do we have the experience to maintain this type, or do we have the ability to make this type of make accessories or put these things together? Do we have to purchase, store-bought accessories as well? So the next part of the presentation, we're going to talk about purchasing sources. So we're going to discuss dealers, private party, option, and big box stores. I'm not going to touch on a whole lot, but basically the difference between dealers and big box stores is that you do not typically have the expertise in a big box store. You might save on cost, but your availability to repair parts and replacement parts and expertise about questions are often lacking from the big box stores. So first, we'll talk about our dealers. Dealers are excellent resources for information. They can offer you guidance in selecting the appropriate size for the task that you wish to perform. It's a great place to go and view products. A lot of dealers, everyone I've ever met will let you test drive and see what you're comfortable on, and they give you great instruction on how to operate the equipment you're looking at. So it's a great place to go and just get some guidance and some hands-on experience. Try not to be, afraid to admit if you're not comfortable with something. you wouldn't believe how, these dealers do this for a living. It's what they want to sell and make you happy. And so, they're happy to help you learn and choose the right product. They do have financing options available. So depending on your situation, if you're a small farm, it might be a great option to get some very low interest, loans and purchasing the equipment. The last thing to keep in mind is that it's necessary to remember that the dealer has motives to sell this product to you. They want to sell you their product, and you just need to keep an open mind and, in your research and understand, what your needs are, and be an informed consumer is really what I'm getting at here. Second avenue we have here are private party purchases. So this can be anything from a front yard purchase. Very bottom left is a tractor that I set out in my front yard and sold a year or two ago. You can find these tractors in different magazines. Tractor House, Ag Source. If you're a John Deere person, Green Magazine is a good one. A lot of them have classified. Well, they all have classifieds in them. Also Craigslist, another online or private party option. So here's our magazine listings. And when we talk to people that are the current owners, they are just a great source of understanding the equipment history, involving the maintenance, the repairs, any type of problems they've had with it. And, most people are fairly honest. They'll tell you what they used the tractor for, why they're selling it, but it's still your responsibility to make an objective decision. You need to go and look at it in person. That's the problem with a lot of the options is that you can't really observe and get an idea of what the equipment is before you really, bid on it. So that's what our next page is the option scene. And these can be great because it gathers many buyers and sellers into one location, which is great. You can have very good luck with making, purchases. And with this buying format, you can get a very good deal on stuff. But you have a high risk with this buying format because sometimes, you can buy sight unseen, like with eBay or Meekum auctions, any type of auction like that. Sometimes you don't understand or don't see all the problems that are associated with it. You don't get to talk with the seller oftentimes. And implement history is sometimes unknown. Therefore, it is the buyer's responsibility to make an informed decision before bidding. And that's what we're going to look into on this last section of the presentation, which is things to look at before you buy. So we want to learn the machine history. You want to learn as much as you can about this equipment. Where it came from, what it was used for, maintenance record. Did they have a professional do it? Did they do it themselves? Does it have any known issues with it? Does it have an accident history? And along with that is clear ownership. So something I'd like to talk about would be tractors and implements do not have titles to them like cars do. You go and purchase a car, it has a VIN number associated with it, and you can, do a Carfax or accident history report. Well, tractors, we can't quite do that yet. They do have serial numbers, but there's no title transferred with the tractor, and so it's sometimes hard to understand the history if it had like a large accident in the past, or you need to be sure that you're purchasing it from the true owner. You don't want to get in between any family issues of, who owns the product. So, what to look for? Here's just a big list of things that we need to look for when we are purchasing used equipment. So we want to look at the fluids. If the tractor is stored in a certain location, it's great to look at the floor, see if it has any types of leaks. Your sense of smell is also very key as well. So smell is one thing I'd say, you want to smell the oil and the fluids, maybe transmission fluids, see if it has a burnt smell. I've looked at tractors before and the oil had a smell of gasoline, meaning there's some type of leak. and fluids were getting into or gas was getting into the oil. And so your nose can really help you in this respect. You can smell different types of scents and just indicate that there are problems with this tractor that you might need to address or look into more in depth before purchasing this tractor. Appearance. So use our sense of sight and look at the fluids, look at the tractor. Mainly on this page we're talking about the fluids, but I have a nifty chart here. You can see if the oil's real dark or if it has a milky color to it, it has some type of water or coolant in the oil. And so just so many signs that we can use to identify problem areas of the tractor. We can also do a couple little field tests if you choose. So this is called a crackle test. And oftentimes people will do this on the oil, and it's quite accurate. Actually, you can detect up to 0.5% by volume of water in the oil, and it's super easy. Usually, somebody just takes a couple drops off the dipstick and puts it on a piece of aluminum foil and holds a lighter underneath it. And if you get a lot of bubbles coming up, like the bottom picture there, and it starts crackling and popping, it kind of sounds like a Rice Krispie treat, then that indicates that there's water in the oil and that you might want to be leery of that purchase. So there are a few little tests like that we can do. So now we're moving on to hitch types. So almost all of our implements have to hook to the tractor one way or another. So if it's not by a drawbar, then we use what's called a 3-point hitch or 2-point hitch on older tractors. So on the very bottom left on the orange tractor, we have the 3-point hitch. So we have two lower arms, and then there's the third point, which is that top arm that's hooked high above. Something to consider on these is that there are 4 basic sizes here. Most small farms use a Category 1 hitch, which you can see in the table there. It just gives you the dimensions of the hitch and the type of implement that hooks to this. So basically what this is sizing the size of your hitch to the implement that you're purchasing. Larger row crop tractors, that is kind of out of the scope of this presentation, but they might use a Category 2 or Category 3 hitch for large implements. But most small farm operations usually use a Category 1 would be the most common. On the right-hand side, you see a 2-point hitch, and you can see that this tractor is missing the top link, and so that's why it's called a 2-point hitch. So basically, this just raises the hitch up and down. So different implements will attach to these two operations in various ways. But the most common and what I would highly recommend would be the 3-point hitch, which is on the left. These are called quick hitch attachments. So hooking something up can be a difficult task, especially if you're doing it by yourself. And it can be dangerous for an assistant to get in between the tractor and the implement. So these 3-point hitches or quick hitch accessories go on a 3-point hitch to assist you in doing it very easily. Like these are made to the dimensions of the implement and allow you to hook up sometimes without even getting off the tractor. Here are some other common things we just want to look at. You look at all the belts to see if they have any types of wear. So we look at just different cracking, misalignment, any type of fraying. Hoses, we talked about hydraulic hoses. Hydraulic hoses on modern tractors are about 3,000 psi. So we do not want to leak. They can be very dangerous. They can cut your skin. Very dangerous on the hydraulic leaks. So we want to look for just common rubs, cracks, cuts, anything like that. Buying a tractor is very similar to buying a car. You want to test drive it to know what you're getting into before you purchase it. So when you test drive it, you want to feel the clutch. If it engages very smooth, the travel, how far the clutch has to move before you actually start moving forward, before it engages. If it's very jumpy or if it has a chatter in it, the clutch is very important. You want to go through all the gears. I know you're not going to remove the top of the gearbox and look at the gears, but what you can do is feel if there's any slop in the gear shifter. if it's real sloppy or if it just really fits nice and tight into a gear. You need to see that all the gears are present. I've seen tractors that you go purchase and it'd be actually missing a gear. Like somebody would break a gear and they just remove it instead of fixing it. And the last thing I have on this page is a live PTO. So older tractors, basically when you push in the clutch, it would disengage the PTO. That's the power takeoff for the implement behind you. Newer tractors, the PTO is not disengaged when you push in the clutch. So it's just something to look at depending on what you are looking for. So what to look for? Continued, here we have structural repairs. So, look to see if the implement or the tractor has noticeable welds to the frame where somebody, had some type of problem or break and they made a repair to it. So try to be aware of any type of repairs that have been made to it. We look at the battery to see if it has noticeable corrosion. Most all batteries have a date stamp on them so you can see how old the battery is, because it's just another thing that you'd have to purchase once you get it home. To be reliable. Nobody wants to go need a tractor and then have to jump start it. Other thing to look for are wheels. On your test drive, you notice that they have a wobble to them, that they're bent. You can test this with a tape measure. Measure from the tops and bottoms to see if they have the same distance as how much they're bent. The other thing we look at is rusting, or if the wheels had fluid in them, any type of ballasting. So it's common to ballast tractors or add weight to tractors by adding a saltwater solution, a calcium chloride solution to the wheels, or more modern tractors sometimes use a sugar solution to add weight to the tractor. But the problem with the salt water is that it'll sometimes rust out the wheels from the inside. And these wheels can be quite expensive. Along with the wheels, we look at our tires for any noticeable cuts, cracks, or wear. And make sure it's a common size, when you go and look at your tractor. Oftentimes, some of these older tractors have an odd-sized tire that isn't very popular now, and you can pay more for a set of tires than what you might pay for the entire tractor. So it's just something to be aware of when you go and look at these. See what accessories are attached or included. So if it has a loader, this also gives you an idea of the life it had before, who used it before. Typically, tractors with loaders or dairy farms might have increased wear just because of how often they're used. Loader tractors often have increased wear on the transmission just by the nature of having a loader on it. So it's something to look at. Also notice the grease fittings or zerk fittings, as they're called, to see if they've ever been used. Sometimes people don't maintain their equipment like they should, and you can see if these, have been, touched recently, if the tractor has been greased. Also, not a light note here, be sure it has safety equipment, know what's on the tractor. ROPS or rollover protective structures, seat belts to go along with your ROPS, slow-moving vehicle signs, lighting, flashers, and guarding or shielding on all the implements that are very, very important to the safety of you and your workers. And then CADs for CAD tractors. You want to check your instruments, make sure they all work. If that's air conditioning, it should be around 40 degrees. So just so many things to look at, and this just gives you an idea of things to go over. So now the last part we're looking at, just the different types of machinery and some examples. So UTVs are quite popular and common on farms and small farms. You can even buy accessories and tools to work on pull behind these UTVs and assist the operators in carrying different products and very handy implements. Post hole diggers. So you have a manual post hole digger in the very bottom left. You can even buy a self-powered one in the top right. You can rent these. There's many different avenues you can go through. The very top is a post driver, and in the very bottom is a post hole digger. And you can put different size augers on these. Say if you have a tree or shrub or anything, you can use it for transplanting things. When you look at mowers, on the very top right is a little tub with a belly mower. this is more for, like maintaining or mowing a large lawn or anything like that. Or if we're doing hay, we look at something more like the very top left, which is a mower conditioner. Maintenance is fairly simple on these, especially you don't even worry about sharpening blades on these because you just flip them over, the reversible blades, and when you use both sides, or both sides become dull, you just replace them completely. And they're quite simple to do. Very old style is a sickle bar mower, which is in the very bottom left. And a very common style would just be a rotary mower, like the yellow one in the very bottom right. Tillers. So tilling attachments are quite popular. We can look at, walk-behind style, like the type in the very top right and bottom left, or mounted style on the tractor in the very top right. Sprayers. I do have some concerns about sprayers. Sometimes people oversize their sprayers and put too much weight on the small back of the tractors. Rollovers of tractors is the #1 cause of death of tractor operators, so we don't want to raise that center of gravity too high. So that's one concern that you have with 3-point mounted sprayers. Another thing I don't like about the very top right picture is that it's an open cab tractor. You're out in the elements. That spray can blow back on you. I especially do not recommend sprayers with booms mounted in front of the tractor. But you'd like to see an enclosed cab if you do very much for the safety of the operator. There are other avenues. You can do the backpack sprayer, or use UTV, or even just a small cart sprayer that uses a battery pack. Some other methods to smooth and level ground would be your box scraper or your grader blades, and you can get these for all kinds of attachments on small tractors or UTVs and most anything in between. Some other attachments, we look at front-end loaders. So you have many different attachments here. You can move bales. You can get clamps to clamp down on brush and debris like the John Deere in the very top left. So you can get many different types of buckets for your special needs of your operation. Seeding, there are so many types of seeders, but the main types would either be like a broadcast, like the top two, or like a direct, like a seed cell or direct placement, like the planter in the very bottom left. Or the very bottom right is a live plant transplanter. So this can be used for vegetable crops, very common in tobacco industry, but you plant plants that are about 6-8 inches tall that are just already grown. And lastly, we have trailers. So, how you're going to transport your equipment once you have it, and if you need to relocate, your equipment to different farms or different locations, or if you ever need to take it in for service. So on the very last slide, take somebody with you. A friend or family member is great. You can use somebody else's knowledge to assist you. There's strength in numbers. Put your heads together, and so you can see more or identify more problems if there are any, and avoid tooling ignorance. So take somebody with you that's familiar with it and knows their way around, and can really assist you in making a good decision. And all these tips and tools all go together to help you make the best decision possible and keep you from being snookered or make a poor decision. So here are additional links or information that you could go to. UC Davis, Penn State is another good one. I didn't have it listed here, but they have some more information. Missouri and some online options as well. So that concludes my presentation. I'm going to hand this back over to Paul, and we'll answer some questions here in a minute. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sean, for that excellent information. We'll be doing our quick poll questions before we begin the question and answer period. So if you have more questions, please feel free to open your chat window and type a question in and send it to everyone. That's your option between, you can choose either to the host or to everyone. Please send that to everyone. Click the send button. If you had multiple people viewing at your location, we would appreciate knowing that. So if you could just send us a quick note saying how many people you had at your location, that would help us keep count of the number of participants here. Okay, I'm going to open our first poll question, and it just asks for your affiliation in terms of whether you're a professional or a consumer or work with extension. So I will open that. Please note that you do need to actually activate the radio button next to the question and not just highlight the question. And you also have to hit the submit button in order to make your response known to us. So we'll just give you a few more seconds on that. If you could go ahead and click, please. And I'll close it in just a second here. Okay. So I will, you can see the percentages of participants there, hopefully. Our next question . Okay, our next question asks about the information that was shared today. Could you please tell us if you found that valuable and if it met your expectations? Again, make sure you click on the actual radio button to the far left of the response. And we do appreciate your feedback. It helps us to guide our future presentations and evaluate what we've been doing. Okay. So you can see responses there. Looks like most people were quite happy. All right, our next question asks about the technology. And I know we did have a little bit of difficulty with our speaker volume, and we'll have to figure that one out. But again, could you tell us if you found the technology to be useful and effective? And if you did have specific issues that you'd be willing to share, if you could just let us know in the chat window if you had a specific problem, and we'll try to troubleshoot that for our next time. Okay, we just a couple more seconds on that. Okay, it looks like most people did all right overall, so we were thankful for that. Our fourth question asks if, based on today's session, you would attend another session. Give you a few more seconds on that. Okay. Again, looks like fairly positive feedback there. Thank you very much for your responses. Finally, we'd just like to know how you heard about today's session. If you could tell us, choose the best response there in terms of how you found out about the session today. It looks like we had quite a few producers as opposed to professionals today, so I'm just curious as to how you heard about the webinar, or if you'd like to, instead of just typing other or selecting other, if you'd like to tell us in the chat window, please feel free to do that also. Just a couple more seconds on that poll. Okay. All right. Most of you got announcements through email, so that's good. All right. As we move into our question and answer period, I will open one more option for you. If you'd like to make specific comments, you can do that. And I'll leave that open while we're doing our questions and answers. And I'll turn things over to Cliff Raz, our technical expert, for questions and answers. So feel free to use that at any time. I gotta find Cliff on my list. Excuse me. Okay. Well, that looks like I'm going to have to close that poll, so we'll open that again at the end if you'd like to make a comment there. Sorry for those that are in the process of typing right now. I think it's going to close you out. I didn't realize we had to do that, so we'll just have to open that later. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay. So, Professor Ash should be putting some questions up, and we will turn things back over to Sean for answering those questions.
Okay. So our first question we have here is, typically, are tractors and other implements sold on a bill of sale? Yes. So when purchasing, I would like to stress this a little bit. When purchasing used equipment, this doesn't apply much from the dealership, but if you purchase it from an individual, private party, anything like that, you would like to get a bill of sale, and the main things you really need are, the date, purchase price, paid in full, signature of the person selling it to you, signature of yours, and even a witness signature. So, you try to protect yourself. You don't want to, open yourself up to any type of, this person came and got my tractor, but they didn't pay for it, So you want to have proof of purchase. And so it's always smart to just be safe with that respect. Okay, the next question. Newer tractors are either gear-driven gearboxes or HST, which is hydrostatic transmission. What are the differences and reasons for any preference? Okay, so a gearbox is just driven from gears meshing together. You select a gear, and that's the speed, within that gear range that you're going to go. Hydrostatic transmissions use hydraulics to, typically it's on a planetary type mechanism or a variable displacement pump on the hydraulic side. But basically it uses a throttle that you select the speed that you're going to go within a certain range. So it's hydraulically driven instead of like select a gear mesh up. There are many advantages to this, and there are kind of hybrids between. Like a hybrid might be, it uses a typical gearbox, but then you have a hydraulic high-low within that selected range. So it turns a gear into basically two gears. Like you have a low first gear, then you have a high first gear, without changing any gears. It can be like a lever on the console of a tractor. Where I have my preference, the easiest to drive is a hydrostatic. They are often more expensive, because it's just a little bit more complex than a typical gearbox on a old tractor. But they're great for if you're going to use it for like a front-end loader or anything like that. When you're changing your direction or your speed, varies quite a bit. Depends on your operation. A lot of row crop tractors, you see, I come from a corn and soybean background, so mainly, except for when you're slowing down to turn on the ends, you maintain a constant speed throughout the field. So gearbox tractors are fine for that. But say I have an animal operation and I'm backing in and out of a barn to, remove manure. A hydrostatic transmission is very nice for that. You don't have to switch gears all the time. And they're very smooth in your acceleration, and your change of direction can be very smooth. So if money wasn't an option, my preference would be hydrostatic. But we all have some type of budget, and so gearboxes are typically less expensive. So that's my reasons and preferences there. Okay, so if your tractor has odd-sized tires, can you get new wheels that are standard size at an affordable cost? Short answer, yes, you can get new wheels. Affordable cost, it just varies on how odd your tractor is. So, if you have an older tractor that's like a Farmall or a John Deere, Cub, like a common tractor, you can find wheels a little bit easier. Now, if you have something that's very odd, it might be difficult. We go back to, I always reference to cars because more people are familiar with cars, but it's like having a very odd old car, finding replacement parts for it. So that's what you can run into, is just the availability and ease of finding the replacement parts. Tires on newer tractors are categorized as ag, turf, or industrial. What are the differences in uses of each type? So the differences are the style of the tread. To just be really short with that one. But on ag tires, typically have a cleat that's fairly deep. It might be 2 or 3 inches deep, depending on the type of tire. Whereas turf tires are made for more turf operations. So say you're doing like a lot of mowing or anything like that. Turf tires do not have deep cleats. It kind of looks like a lawnmower tire. That would be an example of a turf tire. And so basically when you turn on the ends or anything like that, you're not tearing up the turf as much. It's made for, grass operations. Industrial tires are kind of in between each. Industrial is more on, hard surfaces. You don't need that real deep ag cleat because you're not working in soil as much. So industrial tires is kind of like a mixture between the two. It's intended for wear on harder surfaces, and so you don't have quite the traction into what is an ag tire, but it's a similar design. Okay, so question 3, I guess. With so many implements available, how does one go about matching the appropriate size of tractor with implements. Desirable implements with the correct or best. Okay, so what we go by here, we usually go by manufacturer recommendation. So you know what size tractor you have. Say you have a 55 horsepower tractor. So say you're going out to buy a mower. So you look at mowers, you can look at them from from the manufacturer website, or you can talk to the dealer. But typically it goes by horsepower range, and so a mower and weight. So you have a lift ability or a capability of your tractor. And so most mowers, like the gearboxes, might be rated for, say, 50 horsepower, and then say you have a 55 horsepower tractor. An alternative would be, I've seen people put a 150 horsepower tractor on a mower that has a 100 horsepower gearbox. So you have a mismatch of the two. And what happens is you identify the weakest link in the chain. And this is typically either the clutch on the mower, if it has a clutch, or the gearbox. Something's going to break because you have a mismatch of sizes. On the other hand, say you sized a tractor too small for the implement. So an example that comes to mind, I've seen where people would put a small tractor on a unloading auger. And so you're unloading, say, wet corn in the fall, and it takes more friction. It's more friction, takes more horsepower, and it stalled out the tractor with it full of wet corn. Well, that's just a nightmare because you undersized your tractor with the horsepower needed, and so now you're stuck with a auger full of wet corn that you can't restart because you don't have enough power to run it. So what we look at manufacturer recommendations. We look at the limits or the recommendations of the tractor when you purchase it, because it'll have limits on how much it can lift, how much PTO horsepower it has. And you try to size your implements to best suit those two criteria. Okay, question, I think 4. If a compaction is a great concern for a given farm, how much is too much weight for a tractor? The simple answer is that you want to ballast your tractor to just have enough weight to do the task that you're doing. Realistically, people do not change the weights on their tractors. In a perfect world, you would always have something perfectly ballasted. Enough weight on the front, enough weight on the wheel, on the back to, get the power to the ground or to maintain stability of your tractor. What actually happens is people will ballast their tractors, and for some jobs it'll be appropriate, and for lighter jobs it'll be overballasted. Compaction is a great concern, like I said in the presentation. We just try to not go to an extreme. Try not to use a 150 horsepower tractor if you're doing a garden patch, and vice versa. So you just try to appropriately size the application or your tractor to the application. Okay, our next question. What opinions do you have about the purchase of older tractors versus newer tractors? Are older ones capable of doing much of the same as newer ones? This comes down to what you intend to do. My opinions, newer tractors are very expensive. So it comes down to your budget, what you want to do with your tractor. My opinion is that a newer tractor, you would not have as much maintenance costs, and it might be best for your operation. But an older tractor are extremely common in vegetable production. You see so many older Alice Model Gs, and you see a lot of Cub Cadets, older Cubs, older John Deeres. You see a lot of these older tractors because they're just, they're appropriately sized, and they just work great for vegetable production, and they're relatively inexpensive in comparison to newer tractors. So I would say it just really depends on what task you have in mind for it. On my farm, I have a mixture. I have some older tractors but almost all of our farming is done with, newer modern tractors. But we'll power augers and, tow things around with older tractors. But, it just depends on your situation. What is a torque amplifier? So we're getting a little bit more specific on the, mechanics of a tractor. We're not going to go in quite that in depth, so we'll go on to the next one. ATTRA has a handy document titled Use Tractor Assessment, Checklists and Resources. The website looks useful. Okay, there's a comment for us. Here's another comment. It's a Ritchie Brothers Auctioneers have a nice checklist titled Inspection Tips, What to Inspect Before Buying Used Farm Tractor. Okay, here's another question. I'm aware that a nonprofit, Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, allows its members to use a good selection of implements owned for that purpose. Do you know of other such arrangements in various states? I personally do not have a list of these such organizations. I don't know if we keep a list of that here. I'm not aware of it. So no, I do not have a good list of these type of organizations. Okay, what are your recommendations for finding and working with people to build custom equipment? Okay, so we've touched on this a little bit. We've heard of cases involved with this. So sometimes people need different accommodations, and there are some very reputable places that can assist you in different devices. So, for example, say you need assistance in getting onto a tractor. So there are a lot of different companies that'll make lifts and different types of assistive devices. What are my recommendations for finding and working with these people? I think AgrAbility would be a great place to start looking. They have names and lists of people that they can, put you in contact with, people that they've dealt with or companies they've dealt with in the past. So AgrAbility is a good one. Extension might be a good one, depending on where you are in the country. So I would start by just asking your questions to these individuals for recommendations of people they've worked with before. The owner-operator manual. When a farmer purchases an older tractor, should he or she inquire about the owner's or operator's manual? What steps should be taken if the operator's manual is not available? Well, it's always good to have your operator's manual. It allows you to, know your specific specifications and if you're doing your maintenance, it helps you, keep on task, for instance. If you do not have one for your tractor, there are a few sources you can go to online. I would just recommend doing a Google search, but there are some reputable places that actually do reprints. Would be a good place. You can even find these sometimes on auction websites like eBay, and you can find owner's manuals on there. But the first place you could look at would be online, just different reprints or if they're available. I know manufacturers like Case and John Deere. They offer owner's manuals if you don't have them available. They might be kind of pricey, so you might want to look at, like a third party if they have reprints or anything like that. But usually you can find stuff available. Do you have a suggestion on how to go about comparing tractors and implements of different manufacturers? Yes. So typically tractors are categorized by their horsepower. Make sure you're comparing the same type of horsepower. So tractors have what's called drawbar horsepower, PTO horsepower, and there's just a couple others. You find one sometimes that's a crank or engine horsepower. So make sure you're comparing apples to apples, not apples and oranges, because you typically lose about 20% of the engine output to what actually gets to the wheels. So if you're comparing, just make sure you compare the same thing would be my first tip. So we compare horsepower first. Secondly, you compare weights of tractors is very important. So, you could have a tractor with 500 horsepower, but if it's, really light, it can't get the power to the ground. So you compare your size, your weight, and your horsepowers, and that's a good way to cross-brand compare. At least it's a good starting place. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your attention and for your great questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Paul to close everything out.
Okay, thank you, Dan and Sean, for that excellent information. We will be opening that final poll if you'd like to make any more comments, and leave that open for a few minutes as we're closing out today. So we will send you a link when this is finished recording and post it on our website along with the presentation.